What's up guys, Matt Monis here, and just the other day I released a video on the 5 reasons why you should buy the Moto X Play. Well, now this is going to be the full review, and I'm going to talk about the good and the bad, and whether or not you should go out there and buy this phone. So without wasting any further time, let's hop right into it. Let's start off with the design, and the Moto X Play is meant to be a really good mid-range phone. It has all the Motorola trademarks such as a curved back, the Motorola dimple to rest your index finger on, and the front-facing speakers. The frame looks like it's made out of metal, but it's just plastic, and the back uses a rubber texture that helps keep the phone nice and secure in your hand. The right side holds the volume controls and power button, which happen to be my biggest complaint about the design of this phone. The placement of the buttons are fine, it's the way they feel that's not. They're plastic and feel cheap and rattle every time you move it. However, the thin bezels on the front make the phone feel smaller than it really is, and overall it's just really comfortable to hold. I wouldn't say the phone feels premium, nor would I say it feels cheap either. Next up is the display, which is 5.5 inches and 1080p. Unlike the Moto X 2014 or the Nexus 6, it doesn't use AMOLED. It's an IPS display with great viewing angles, sharp text, and brightness. To put this in perspective compared to other screens on the market, I'd say it's better than the one on the Asus Zenfone 2, but not as bright as the one on the Alcatel Idol One Touch 3. I'd put it somewhere in the middle. And since we're talking about the front of the phone, you'll notice 2 speaker grills, one at the top and the other at the bottom. Unfortunately, the one at the top is only used to listen to calls, and any sound from music, your speakerphone, or videos are done by the one on the bottom. The sound of the speaker is good, and to give you an example, it's not as loud as the speaker on the back of the LG G4, but it's definitely a lot cleaner. Also, the fact that it's front-facing allows you to listen to it without accidentally covering it up. Next up is the software and performance, and the Moto X Play is running Android 5.1.1 with a pretty much stock Android UI. Combine that with a Snapdragon 615 processor, 2GB of RAM, and you have a very capable mid-range phone. For the most part, everything ran smooth and fluid with little to no lag. Heat was a non-issue with the phone staying relatively cool even during the most intensive tasks. Now, if gaming is your top priority, the Moto X Play does a decent job, but the Adreno 405 GPU is actually a lot slower than the Adreno 330 GPU found on the Moto X 2014. Now, if you want to stay within the same budget and gaming is your thing, I highly suggest picking up the Moto X 2014 from last year, or even possibly considering something like the Asus Zenfone 2. Like I just mentioned, the phone is running a pretty close to stock Android UI. Motorola continues to keep things nice and tidy and only add a few useful features that you can turn on or off. You have Moto Voice, allowing you to have access to Google Now from anywhere, Moto Display that lets you check your notifications by moving the phone or picking it up, and One Moto Gesture that allows you to quickly access the camera by twisting the phone. What's weird is the chop chop gesture that automatically turns on the flashlight is actually missing, but present on the new Moto G 2015. And speaking of missing things, the Moto X Play doesn't have a gyroscope, which is used to help orient your device while navigating. It's a minor exclusion, but a pretty standard spec in most phones that are released these days. Next up is storage and battery life. And the Moto X Play comes with 16GB of internal storage and 10.9GB of usable space. Now, it does have a microSD card slot that can support up to 128GB. Motorola does also make a 32GB version of this phone, but in Canada we're limited to the smaller one. Now, one of the biggest features of this phone is the battery. It has a 3630 mAh battery. That's a big battery for any phone, and when you combine that with a 1080p screen, stock Android, and an efficient processor, you're gonna get some really good battery life. I had no problems getting a day and a half with heavy use and 3.5 hours of screen on time. Now, the screen on time may seem low, but that's only because I was streaming a lot of music and listening to podcasts. If I just used it strictly for browsing the web, checking emails, and sending messages, I'd easily push the screen on time to 5 hours. The bottom line is when you unplug your phone in the morning, you can feel confident that you'll make it through the whole day and some before plugging it in back at night. Now, you're probably thinking because it has a bigger battery, it's probably going to take a long time to charge. Well, it doesn't take long. Because it has quick charge, you can charge the entire phone in just 2 hours. Finally, the camera. And out of all the mid-range Android phones on the market, this one has the best camera. A rear-facing 21 megapixel shooter that has an aperture of f2.0. During the day and in well-lit areas, the camera is very impressive. Pictures are full of detail. You can really zoom in and see how crisp things look. Color accuracy and saturation were perfect, and photos were never too over or underexposed. Pretty impressive for a mid-range phone. Now, things aren't always perfect though. In low light, the camera starts to perform poorly, and the sensor has troubles autofocusing on moving objects. Most of these issues are plagued by the camera software that Motorola is using, and I feel confident with proper software updates, the low light and autofocusing issues can be resolved. And finally, I just want to mention it's capable of recording 1080p video, and it does the job fine. If you want 4K video recording, you'll have to consider the Moto X style instead. Alright, so what's the bottom line? Should you go out there and buy the Moto X Play? Well, here's what I think. This phone does 3 things really well. It runs stock Android and provides a very clean and smooth user experience. It has an amazing battery that most other mid-range phones don't have. And the most important feature of this device, I think, is definitely the camera. You're getting a really good camera for half the cost of higher-end devices. Now, I know a lot of you out there are probably saying, well, you know, the OnePlus 2 costs around the same price. And that's true, it does. And if you can get an invite, go ahead and do that. But for most of the people out there, they're probably not going to be able to get an invite. And I definitely think this is a very worthy choice. So what do you guys think of the Moto X Play? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys have one already, let me know what you like and dislike about your device. And I just want to thank everybody for watching this video. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. And I'll see everybody in the next video.